Are we okay?
Yeah, she's.
I shouldn't hear her. If I hear her,
No, you're good.
Okay.
Well, good evening, Saginaw. This is Kareem Bowen. You've tuned into another edition of Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen. I am your host for the next hour, and hopefully we will have a great time together. I got in the studio with me, as always, the main man, the Rob Father. Rob, give him a shout out.
So, Straight Talk audience, how are you?
Hey, man, we're so glad to be here today. And on this Sunday, I have a wonderful guest that will be with us a little bit later towards the hour. It is Joyce Graham. Many of you in Saginaw are not aware of her, but she is a woman who is about her business. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health awareness. She's written 2 books to assist individuals in understanding the importance of knowing that you are mentally well, emotionally well. And we're going to talk about that for just the everyday Joe, and also for those who are a part of church. You know, Rob, they say that there's a very thin line between a crazy and a God complex, is what I've heard so many years.
Oh, I know there's a difference between the two.
There is a difference. And so we want to make sure that we are all emotionally and mentally well. It is vital. But you know how we do. We get started off at the beginning of the show talking about what's on my mind. And I got a few things that are on my mind that I want to talk about. And we're just going to park it in this zone for just a little bit. Well, we know when we've talked a little bit on last week, we kind of tiptoed through it just a little bit on Roe versus Wade, Rob. Well, what we've heard now and the response and the lack of a fight from the Democratic Congress, it appears that Roe versus Wade is just really a matter of checking boxes and closing this out. We know that the end of the Supreme Court cycle is in June. So I would imagine that there might be some opinion, some formal opinion or vote on it by the end of this next cycle, which means that for the past few decades, a number of decades that we've had Roe versus Wade, which really gives women the right to control their bodies in this thing called abortion, that will be a thing of the past. What are your thoughts, Rob?
50 years gone by, and we are going to face what we faced before the 50 years started, and that is women trying to get an abortion. Those who cannot afford it will attempt to do it themselves. And I just fear for our country in that aspect.
See, this is what we must understand about the law is that we've had rules and regulations and things, and many times the things that have been most effective in getting those laws changed has been what people do as a desperate measure outside of the law. And we know what has happened in the history of illegal abortions and private abortions and all these things that have taken place. And now we're moving in the system, like you said, we're reversing. The real question for me, whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, or whatever it is, the real question to me is what's next. When we have institutions that are responsible for what takes place in our country, things that we count on, Rob, things that we depend on, now being subjected to political sway and political opinion and moving the course of these institutions, which should be outside of politics, becoming subject to political fodder, it begins to make me ask the question, what's next? What are your thoughts?
Well, many years ago, some of the young people may not remember this, but we had the Kevorkian situation about the right to die. And the question was whether or not a person had a right to control his or her life in that aspect. In my opinion, this is my opinion, not Alpha Media's opinion, I believe that every person has the right to do with their body what they want to do with their body, so long as it does not hurt anybody else. And that's the problem that I see here. Not so much the harm factor that a woman may go through and get an abortion illegally or ravishingly for somebody else, but that she should have that decision to do that sort of thing. And the government should not be involved. That's where the politics of it all gets involved. I never understood since high school how this all got to be a political situation anyway, until, it did.
Well, I said this, and to many's detriment, I said that when it came to the COVID vaccination, we were talking about people should be mandated to get the vaccination. I said that people should be allowed to do with their soul, with their body, what they desire to do with their body. Now, whether you're for abortion or against, I personally believe in life, and so I am a pro-life in terms of my ideology. However, in terms of my practice, I think people should be able to do what they want to do as it relates to those things and their personal bodies. Okay.
Exactly.
However, I do believe that when I look at this, it's not really only the abortion thing, but it reminds me of some other things that you and Rob, we happen to be brothers of a darker skin color. We happen to be African Americans, African descendants of slaves. And this is why this conversation really becomes so important, because the new way that the world and government and politics wants to refer to us is they want to refer to us as people of color.
Right.
It has now become the acceptable term to talk about folks of color, people of color, POC. But the reality of the situation is that I'm less concerned with people of color. We've come to a place that we have to be a little, what we say, selfish with the things that we fight for. And what we've seen is a lot of rights and opportunities that have been extended to POCs, people of color, and disproportionately given to us in terms of ADOS, African descendants of slaves.
Well, one of those rights is for a person to marry who he wants to marry, who she wants to marry. In this case, we had the mixed marriage situation many years ago.
Absolutely.
So if a black person or a white person can marry someone because of their race, there's a problem. If someone can marry someone of the same gender, there's a problem with that. So
absolutely. And we got Jeffrey Bulls who's jumping in the stream. He said, "Hey, POC is disrespectful," and to people who were a product of the slave generations, the 400 years of slavery here in the United States, our situations and the things that affect us as quote unquote people of color is very different than the Asian that came over by choice. It's very different than the Mexican who came over by choice,
or the Italian,
or any other person that came across here. It's very different, even the Native American who came over, who is here,
already here.
The indigenous here, but it's very different because not only were our land taken away from us, because now that's how many of you guys that are shopping at these different stores that have conflict diamonds, and when you get married, you get excited, you want a big diamond because that diamond shows you how much he loves you, but it really doesn't, because many people marry a ring and never have a real marriage. But you have these, you have these diamonds that are signed, and we want a flawless diamond, and we don't realize that many of the diamonds that we deal with, even right now, because you have to do your research, are conflict diamonds.
That's right.
What's a conflict diamond? When people came to Africa, they didn't just find folks running around in loincloths, doing a Hatutsi or whatever they want to call it. We were people who were civilized. They came and they noticed. And I don't want to say the Neanderthals from Europe, but when they came, we were not, walking around on our knuckles. We were civilized. We had kingdoms and queendoms. We were organized. We were not, we're tribal. When we say tribal, we're talking about the type of people and who we are as a people. We weren't running around with bone plates and lips. Some of these things are
stereotype in movies and what have you.
Exactly.
Like it was Tarzan movies, for example.
And there is some indication of those types of things, but by all means, that is not what everybody was. That is what they have decided to depict us. But we had running plumbing. We had plumbing, indoor plumbing.
That's what I like about the Black Panther movie years ago, because even though it's situated in a civilization that's far advanced, it still represents the fact that Africans were a civilized people.
Man, I wish our people would really take an opportunity to really begin to understand the richness of who we are as a people. And so when I talk about ADOS, African descendants of slave, ADOS, I'm talking about people who had everything going on. We had kingships. There was 2-story buildings that existed. When we look at the pyramids, Los Piramides, for those who are Hispanic, we're looking at buildings and structures that were created by people for their kings and representation of their kings. When we talk about great scientists, and I hate to hear young Black folks say, I hate math or I hate chemistry, because in reality, what we're talking about are things that were created by African people. When we talk about, the Kimi people, the original people, the first origin of where mankind came from, it wasn't Madame Curie, it was the Kimi people that came up with things such as chemistry and things of that nature.
Yep.
But we give those credits or they're taken from us. And then we come into this nation after 400 years of being degraded as men and women of character and intelligence. And now to be referred to as a POC, person of color. You cannot group our struggle. You cannot group our contribution to this nation with the other individuals who are part of this nation.
Exactly.
And that's nothing against any one of those, because many of our struggles are the same.
Right.
But what is different is that our contribution to this country is matchless. It cannot be compared to any other non-native to this land, including the white man himself. We are the reason why this great nation exists, and why we should have the ability to love it. Because when I see this nation, I see the blood shed and the tears sweat by my forefathers. So I'm going to get off my little high horse, but we were talking about why we as Black folks should be concerned about what's taking place with Roe versus Wade, because our gift of the right to vote was something that was not also included in the Constitution. Right. It is an amendment to the Constitution. Right. So if we can begin to change things that we fundamentally see as rights in our nation, because of the fact it was not originally what the initial writers thought, then there are a lot of other freedoms and rights that are out there that also fall subject to the same type of discussion and thinking that Roe versus Wade does. That is what is my biggest concern. And so if we can begin to change Roe versus Wade, we have to begin to understand what else can be changed, Rob.
Yep.
All right. So we moving right along. I got that out my system. Now I can do my 1, 2, 3. Woosah, relax, relate, and release. All right. So let's talk a little bit about COVID-19, Rob. You and I are fully vaccinated. I don't know where we are in the shots. I've had
my second booster already.
Okay, you've had your second booster. Well, I'm on my first booster.
Catch up, dude. Catch up.
I got some time to go, but this is the thing that becomes my issue, and this is my issue. And so they're gonna say, Kareem, well, you're an advocate for vaccinations. I absolutely am. I think that whenever we come with something that is better for our community, that protects our community, I'm 100% for it. This is my issue. When we were vaccinated and the vaccinations were created for a particular variant that existed, I think the dominant variant at the time may have been the Delta variant, which was
Omicron. I'm not sure.
It was Delta, yeah. Right. So it was very deadly. It attacked the human body. I was going to say the human body in a particular way. A lot of respiratory issues, a lot of pneumonia, double pneumonia. These were the things that were happening. Our organs were attacked in a very different way. We still have the danger of this virus around. The pandemic is not over. No. There are still many issues that are there. Now we have, as the most dominant version, it is not Omicron even, but there's another, but it's very Omicron-like. I guess the cousin of the sister, twin brother to the Omicron variant, which attacks the body in a very different way. And now the CDC and other individuals are saying that our protection from this particular, from this variant, by the vaccination only lasts about 4 weeks after you get that second booster. So this is my thing. It's not that I'm anti-virus, but what I'm saying, or anti-vaccine. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm saying that if I'm only getting 4 to 6 weeks of protection from this, and I have issues with what's going on, and this variant is not as deadly in the same way as the other one was, it just take you out. Look like people were dropping like flies every inch way. But this one appears to have a more long-lasting effect. Like there are things that they're now finding, or maybe it's just because they're finding this now because we've had it around for a couple of years, that there are some lasting issues that are now going on. I'm not feeling as inclined to get vaccinated or get my next booster, Rob. Speak some life into me. Tell me some truth.
I would think that, first of all, it's important to understand that if you're not vaccinated at all, then you're more subject to get hospitalized. The vaccine is not designed to prevent you from getting it or to necessarily protect you. It's to keep you from becoming very sick as you would if you had not had it. The booster boosts the original vaccine. The second booster does it based on age and whatnot. And scientists, as I understand the last reading I've read, is that the CDC or the scientists are still working on a permanent aspect. It's like the flu shot, for example, and that since the flu shot changes every year, or the flu changes every year, they still adapt that accordingly. So they're doing the same thing with this COVID thing. That's one thing I understand about it. So I would go on the side of caution, better to get, and it's not harming you than to not have it at all and wish that you had gotten it.
No, and I agree with you 1,000%. So a lot of my protective measures, I am back to wearing a mask when I get out.
And as you should, because a lot of people are still not vaccinated, and a lot of people did not get the second booster because the first vaccine is wearing off already for most people. So
And not only that, but our numbers are starting to climb. We see that if you guys have been around, our numbers of COVID individuals that have contracted COVID in Michigan. Michigan is one of those hotspots. Right. We are bright red when you look at that map of, yellow meaning that you're clear. Green means some level of caution. Pink means that it's on the rise. Red means hit the door, run, and put your mask on and don't look back. We are bloodshed red.
And more important to interject there, if you are susceptible to any disease based on your health, if you got
primordial conditions or
it makes sense for you, especially our people, to get vaccinated or at least get checked out by your doctor.
I think that doing that as well. I think that we are moving to a phase of this pandemic where we are now, because what's not going to happen is this. And it's funny because I'm a pastor and I got people, pastor, we got to do this. The rest of the world is living their life. And so the fact of the matter is, if the only place that you get protection and people got you masking and sanitizing is when you come to church, which half of y'all still ain't returned to church, shame on you, get back to the house of the Lord, is the only time when you come to church, you're spending, because the average American gives less than 3 hours of their work week or their entire 7 days being inside a temple of worship or any level of commitment. That's what statistics say. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about 3% of your life per week is spent in a assembly of God. So that means that everything else that you're doing, they're not masking, they're not doing mask mandates. They're not doing mandates on sanitizing anymore. They're not doing mandates on social distancing. As a matter of fact, we're repealing those things, which means we're going back to normal. The rest of the world is going back to normal. So you have to begin to understand that what has happened now is that we've seen that there are some measures that you can take to protect yourself, which are vaccinations. And I'm all for vaccinations. And if you don't take those measures, then your life is now at risk and it's in your hand.
And you risk someone else's life too,
but the fact of the matter, it's on you. It's exactly. On you. Yes. So what someone else does, if they wash your hands, that's why you can't eat at everybody's house. If they got cats jumping from counter to counter, wall to wall, pets running, don't bring me nothing. Don't cook me nothing. Think about it. Give me a gift certificate and let me go out to you because I'm not eating your food.
I'm not eating your potato salad.
No, for sure. You got to put your hands in the potato salad and dress. You can't eat that from everybody.
Exactly.
But what we're beginning to understand is that we're now seeing that every 4 to 6 months there is a surge that is. We went the first, second, third. I don't know if we're in our fourth, fifth, or sixth, but every 4 to 6 months we're seeing a surge in this. So this is becoming a cyclical piece of how we're operating. Right. And because we have half of the nation that believes in vaccinations and the other half that is anti-vaccination, this is going to be the type of virus that we're dealing with. At every so many months, 4 to 6 months, we're probably going to see a rise and fall, which would put us more. Which would put us more in another type of coronavirus, which we call the common cold. But the reality of it is, that period is you don't get a cold every 4 to 6 months.
No.
But we understand that in certain seasons, you got to really be on washing and shaking and all of those things. Right. This means that we're going to have some lifestyle changes, and we're going to have to pay attention when this virus is high in our community. We mask up. We're making sure that we're extra sanitizing. Hopefully you wash your hands every time you go to the bathroom or before you eat. Hopefully that is a natural practice. Usually in this KISS 107.1 FM audience, we don't have to worry about that. Most of us have done that unless we've been living on the other side of the tracks a little bit longer, then we kind of lose our way. Rob is in the studio right now pulling out alcohol wipes because he knows that there was somebody else in here before we were. We cannot talk about it. Rob, can you open this, please? Sure. We love you, Joyce, but we don't know everywhere your guests or whomever has been, not that anyone, but we can't take these things for granted. So as those of you who are watching our second show, I say there's 2 shows, the one that you hear on the radio, and then there's the one that you see in the studio. I am following my own advice, and I'm sanitizing my area.
Yeah, I take care of that before you go.
And normally he does this, and he forgot. And so I'm sitting up here all talking about vaccinations and being clean while in an infected environment. I think you need to write the radio station.
No, Rob Father.
And tell them to deal with the Rob Father.
I take care of all that.
All right. But so I think that it's important for us just to take note of that. Health officials are now saying it's time to go back to indoor masking where we're indoors. And I think that that's very important. Now, I want to report really quickly. This is something that's really cool. And we're going to get to our guests that's on the show. Hey, those who are watching the video stream, I'm praying that we don't run out of juice, because I did not bring my power cord in here. And I don't think Rob is set up to continue this online. We do have a social media stream. So if we should die on Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen, there is always Kiss 107.1 FM. Their stream is also going live. All right. But I want to talk with Mary Wise Club. I told you, Rob, that I was invited to speak with them. It's a group of old ladies. I think the average age was about 80, was the base age, the youngest individual. They meet every third Tuesday at the Saginaw Club. When they invited me, I asked, are we as Black folks invited to go there? Because I never thought we were. But found out that we were. The President Carol Eunice asked me to come in. It was a very exciting and amazing opportunity, Rob. These women came in and I talked about, historically where Black people were. Then we talked about the situations that had existed. We talked about Jim Crow and all of these other pieces. Eventually, we began to talk about, look at you coming in here prepared. Eventually, we began to talk about things such as CRT, critical race theory. Now, I need y'all to understand me something, family. This is very important. When we were talking, and I'm going to say something about this, so I need you to kind of listen into what I'm saying. While we were talking about how Black voices are often overlooked or not paid attention to. And I said to the ladies that, when we entered into something called white spaces, if you've ever read the book by Robert DiAngelo, we talked about it, Rob, a number of times. What was the name of that? White Fragility.
Right.
There are a couple of terms.
Written by a white woman who Robert DiAngelo is.
Absolutely. And so when we look at that, there are a number of terms that often I find that white America has problems with. One of those terms is white privilege. And I'm forgetting the other term, but it'll come to me in a second. I had one of the women who's about 85 years old tell me that in 1943, she's 80, close to 80 something. She said in 1943, she was at Arthur Hill High School. Now listen to this. And there were 4 Black students that were at this university. And those 4 came in and they had absolutely no problem. Everything was fine. They could do what they wanted to do. And people continued through the conversation and they just ignored it. I said, whoa, we got to go back and we got to process something. And they said, in order for, and I told them, I said, if we're going to look at this and we're going to be honest, we've got to look at this thing and be honest with ourselves, because the reality of the situation is this. If you think that you had 4 Black students in a school that was about 1,200 students total, and you had 4 Black students that came into an all-white school in 1943, and there were no issues, you got to get the age, you got to get the date, and there were no issues, that goes to further explain what I mean about when Black people enter into white spaces. Black faces in white places, absolutely. And she said, well, what do you mean? Everyone accepted them. They had no problems. I said, this is what happens when white America gives diagnosis to Black trauma. Because we didn't see the fact that we were pain, because we are resilient as a people. We were always taught, never let them see you sweat. We were always taught, you got to be twice as good. So there are things that we have learned from our trauma and the experiences of our trauma that we have turned around and made our strengths. I said, so if you think that in 1940s, when the desegregation of schools happened, when, Rob?
I think it was in 65.
20 some years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the 40s. This is before the desegregation of schools started. You're in Saginaw. You're bringing 4 students into an all-Black school. Do you not understand the amount of trauma that those Black students would feel? Mm-hmm. Do you understand that those Black students were in there thinking, we're not going to cause any trouble. We're just going to do what we got to do to make it through. Do you understand the pain that those and the fear that their parents had to have sending them into the spaces, understanding that in the 40s, this is before we've even got to any of the civil rights that we now understand and have the ability to somewhat appreciate. And so I shared with them, I said, I need you to go and think of a time in your life when you as a white woman have ever entered into a space and you were one of 4 in a space of 1,200 Black folks. Let's make it easy for you in a space of 1,200 Mexican folks. Because let's take it, the darker your skin, the more afraid of you people happen to be. And she says, I never thought about it like that. I said, exactly. And here you are preaching to people that you had 4 Black students that were in your graduating class, and I sure you wore that as a badge of honor because they had no problem. It wasn't that they didn't have any problems, it's that you didn't recognize or realize their trauma.
You were not empathetic towards them. You were not sensitive to what's going on in their mind.
Absolutely.
You took it for granted because your wife.
Because you didn't feel it.
Right. You had privilege. You had nothing to worry about.
And so I just, so I had to kind of give them some understanding and some love. They're 80-some years old. They received it. And they're like, oh, we never thought about that. And some was up in there kind of radical, like, no, it's more power for the people. And so I was excited. But what I will say to you is that as we continue to strive for what's right, let us make sure that we take every opportunity sometimes to let people know it's not that we don't have trauma, it's just that we don't have the responsibility to reveal to you my trauma. And I certainly don't have to train you in my trauma. If you want to know what it's like in my world, why don't you read a book? Then you can begin to open yourselves up and stop trying to fight and hide the facts, CRT, and let's give a full version of what American history is.
Don't be afraid to ask a Black person how they feel about certain things, because we would tell you the truth. We have no reason to lie about it, especially those of us who have been through it.
Man, you say that. Somebody said the privilege you can't understand. Absolutely. But we're going to move forward, and I want to give really just kind of a quick look. And after this, Rob, we're going to take a break in between this and my next speaker, if that's okay with you. Or would you prefer to take a break now?
It's up to you, boss.
All right, let me get through this, and then we'll take a quick break. And the last couple of things that's on my mind, it was this Juneteenth celebration. If I don't get to that in this next phase, because I'm going to tell y'all the truth about what's going on with Juneteenth. We have been free, but we ain't completely been liberated. I'm going to tell you the truth. The 411, get your family, get your cousins, tell everybody to get in here, because we're going to have that conversation. It is very important that you're having echo feedback. Thank you. I appreciate that. There's something that we're working with in the studio when one speaker or something is going up. It sometimes does that, but y'all just bear with us. We're going to make that thing work out. I want to talk real quick about what happened in Buffalo. And we've been talking about this, but so much more information has come to light. And I want to share this from a different perspective. And this is from a supermarket worker who dialed 911 during the massacre. Her name was Letitia Rogers. Now, this is what we talk about, compounded trauma, and how other folk don't necessarily understand the things that we deal with and the things that we're going through. So Letitia's trauma, nearly 12 years ago, she was in a City Grill restaurant in Buffalo with her brother, Danielle Mackin. And during that time, a man opened fire, killing her brother and 3 others. 4 people were wounded, and one whose came later in their life due to those injuries, okay? She was a worker, the same woman who experienced that traumatic experience, now is a worker. Letitia Rogers is her name. If you want to look her up, please do so. She's now a worker in this same grocery store, this Rogers grocery store. And in this, she was there when the Peyton S. Gendron, who's 18 years old, this white supremacist, came in and began firing. So she jumped on the floor. She was behind the service desk, and she began to dial 911 because that's what we thought that we were going to, we were supposed to do, Rob. When you're in trouble, you call 911. And I guess in 1980s, Flavor Flav said, get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. Hopefully we've had some progress, but we know that we've had issues with having those services in our community. So she's on the phone. The dispatcher who received her call is now most likely going to be fired. But she answered the phone and asked, "Why are you whispering?" Now, Rob, if I'm in trauma and I'm calling 911, what does that tell you?
You're in trouble.
That I got an issue going on.
Yes.
That there's a 911 emergency, one of which I may not be able to articulate or speak loudly.
Exactly.
After trying to convince the worker, she dropped her phone because she's afraid. There's a madman walking through shooting guns. She's hearing boom, 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 boom taking place. She then grabs her phone and she puts it on silent because you know what 911 does. They always call the number back.
Yep.
And so when they called her back, she had it on mute. She tried to converse. The phone dropped dead. So it's believed that the 911 operator hung up on her and did not call back. She then gets a call from another friend that was a coworker at the store that was seeing this because this was happening on social media live.
Right.
They're having a video chat conversation, but of course the phone has to be muted because she don't want them to hear that she's on the phone having this conversation. Someone else calls the operator. Then all of a sudden the store goes, she says it's completely silent. No more screams, no more running. The store is now dark, and you hear the radio in the store also went off, and all you hear are the steps of someone walking on broken glass, silently, methodically, looking down the aisles.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that type of trauma?
That
So
fear.
this woman had already been traumatized by what happened to her 12 years previously. She's now in a situation where that she's reliving that trauma of when her brother was killed, and she calls out for help from the authorities and is experiencing compound trauma because they're asking her, why are you whispering? You don't have to talk. They can't hear us. So this is the situation that's going on right now. We know the situation in Buffalo, New York, where 11 of the 13 individuals were Black. And now this 18-year-old stands to be accused of first-degree murder. We're assuming. He said that he's innocent until proven guilty. We understand by his manifesto, and this is what we were talking about on last week. Jeff Bulls was making, we had this conversation, and I said that we need to begin to have some serious conversations. And one of them was not that we need to classify this as a gun control problem, but we do need to take away certain types of gun because they think that it's killing season. And I talked to you, I explained to you why assault rifles and shotguns are flying off the shelves at an alarming rate.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to places where these things are happening. So that was that conversation. But what we did not want to have happen is that we did not want people going in and saying that this is a gun problem. And I shared with you all that guns have never killed anybody. You put a gun on the table, no one dies. But when they fire that gun, people kill people. And so when we see officers or young people dying at the hands of officers, it's the officer who killed them. The gun didn't kill them. The officer did. So this man has said that he is a racist, that he is a nationalist, that he is a white supremacist. And I say when someone tells you that, you believe them.
That's right.
And so we have to
Angela.
begin to treat this. And you know, President Biden, I thought he was going to go in there and start talking crazy, talking about guns. And he did make that statement. He recognized that this is white supremacy. But the fact of the matter is, America, wake up. Black America, wake up. There are still large swaths of individuals who do not like you simply because the hue of the melanin in your skin. And what I need you all to understand is because your Black is beautiful, you should never stop the fight. You should never retreat, no surrender. But we have to stand up in opposition to those who think that we have no place in this country, because we are here. We created the land. We have built the land. Our blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors is here, and it makes America great. It's always been great in that relation or that respect, but making it again, we don't know about. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back in just a couple seconds, continuing with Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen.
Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS 107.1. Culver's could have only started in Wisconsin.
That power cord working? Okay, because I have my
Yes.
computer up here, and I never know if I'm going to need one of them.
Appreciate it.
Just happen to have it. You got less than 30 minutes on your show. That's why when you get to the other guests.
What'd you say?
You have probably less than 30 minutes on your
Yeah, I
show.
see that.
As far as the echo, I don't know. That's if it's going on the air, then we're good there. There's no echo in my
Yeah,
head,
yeah.
So,
And I think it's just when you, whatever you're doing with that volume knob over there or whatever it is, I don't know.
I'll turn your volume down your mic. I don't do anything over here.
She said echo is resolved.
That's because the mic's off.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So maybe mine is too high or
I
whatever.
don't know. You got a mic on there, a mic on there.
Well, this one is muted. This one is muted.
Okay, then it must be, I don't know, but it can't be picked up from these mics. These mics are the same feeding. I don't know.
Come on in and with a smile that stretches from
You'll be back soon to turn the mic on. If there's an echo. Drink a while you look dry. Gosh.
Is just $249.99 after sale price and 11% rebate. Pair that with a delicious deal on Clement's Bratwursts. All Clement's brats and sausages are just $249 after sale price and 11% rebate while supplies last. Good through Memorial Day. Savings are mail-in rebates. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
You know your closet well, but what does it sound like?
Rob, should we bring her in so that we can hear her?
That's up to you, yeah.
Yeah.
But I hope you can get, if not, give her the number so she can call in. Give her the phone number in case.
Can we see if she's okay? Can she hear us without us going on the air?
She should hear, yeah, she should hear, she should hear you.
Hello, Joyce.
Yes, I'm here.
She should hear you.
Earth to Joyce. Earth to Joyce.
See you later.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Earth to Joyce.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
It's Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on
I am
Okay, this is
here.
Kareem Bowen, and I'm going to just get to this last thing that we got here, and then we're going to get back to our speaker that's going to come in here. We have Joyce Graham. We're going to talk about mental health just for a short second. She has for the remainder of our show. But I want to give you guys an update in terms of what's going on with our Juneteenth celebration. Jeff Bulls, I see that you posted our elected officials are scared to say black. Instead, they call for a domestic terrorism bill. We need a specific bill just like the others groups have gotten. We noticed that when there was that mass shooting for the Asian, I'm not sure if it's Vietnamese, Chinese, whatever it was, but there was, I think it was Chinese. There was a specific Chinese hate bill that came out, and they had no issue with saying Chinese. And I think that that's absolutely fine. And we've got to stop feeling bad or stop feeling, letting the world make us feel bad for us being, requesting and demanding the things that we have a right to having. I agree with you 100%. All right. You said we can hear her. I don't hear her yet, so we're going to wait for her to come in. They're saying that they can hear her, Rob, but I don't hear her. So we're just going to give a quick second. I want to finish up with this last piece, and then we're going to get to this conversation. The Juneteenth celebration, as you know, we have been talking about this for some time, and Miss Renee has been on the show talking about her desire. I stepped in at the request of our, I had a conversation with our city mayor and told her, hey, I'm going to step in. Can we get assistance with making this happen? Spoke with Heather Ho, and I believe in calling people to the carpet. I spoke with Heather Ho on 7 different occasions. She is a city employee. She works in special events and engineering over there at the building across the street from City Council or City Hall. You call her 50 times, she may call you back, and I don't know if it's just the nature of her job or if it's the nature of why we were calling that we were not getting return phone calls. Yours truly, who put together, helped put together with the parade for Draymond Green when that was the situation. There were a few issues. We rectified that and we were able to move forward. However, we've been calling. I may call 3 or 4 times and get a call a few days later. Maybe that's just the nature of her being backlogged. If so, I certainly think that we need to help her out as often as possible, help them out to take care of what's necessary. But when it comes to these things, the city is very important, and what they desire to do is very important. So I spoke with Heather Ho, and I also spoke with the powers that be over there, and then I gave a call back. I was told, hey, you need to give a call to Tim Morales, and that will be my next step. I'll be calling Tim, tried to do so, but it was kind of late on Friday. I'll be doing so on tomorrow. But this is the nature in terms of what's going on, and I need you to let everybody know exactly what's going on. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm never going to lie to you. I was told that because this is the city is short-staffed, and I want you all to pay attention, because the city or the police department is short-staffed, that they can't do it. Initially, the date that we had selected was Father's Day weekend, so it was that Sunday. So we made the transition. I said, hey, is there any way that if we make the change and we move it from Sunday to Monday, let's do it on Monday so that we can, then now we're in a weekday, we'll do it. The kids are out of school. If we did it from 10 a.m., start the parade. We had an amazing time with Cinco de Mayo. I was on air with Larry Rodarte and just celebrating the thousands of people that came out for Cinco de Mayo. Surely we can have, an amazing time doing this. And I don't think that we have to put other people under the bus or address what other people were allowed to do when it comes to us being able to do what we want to do. I find solidarity with my Hispanic brothers and sisters. And so this is not an issue of them or us or them and what they get and what they don't, because they're two different issues. I was told that we could not have the city police because none of them had volunteered. There were no volunteers. And at first I was kind of like, my feathers were ruffled. I said, why would they volunteer when very few of them look like the people of the community that they're policing? Pun intended. And so, it was what it was. But then I began to understand, if I was a father, I want to be with my children on Father's Day. So let's do this on Friday. I certainly understand the city being understaffed. Then was told that, the price of the parade went from $3,000 something to now the city is going to have this parade. And this is the first time that this has ever happened. And they said, well, this is how we're going to move forward for all events. I said, well, all events have, a whole year to prepare, or at least months to prepare. Juneteenth is not just a Black celebration, or it should not be, but I know that's how many people in America feel. But this should be a celebration by all of America. When we're going to talk about American history, when Blacks became free, supposedly, It should be a celebration for all of America because our uniqueness and our heritage and our culture is what makes America great. I'm gonna say that again. Our uniqueness, our contribution, and our heritage is part of what makes America great. So the new bill that was given was by an outside group was about $14,000. And so Juneteenth, as you all know, celebration is right around the corner. We're talking in 2 weeks. An organization that is not funded by a community. Is this a private citizen of the community that wanted to work? I jumped in. There was others that were jumping in. And the fact of the matter was what they told us was that, hey, $14,000 outside citizen, and that's our answer. We're sticking with it. So Heather Ho told me that she had been spoken to the city officials. Phil Carwad, who's in charge of that area, I guess he was a part of the meeting that she talked about. Also, our county sheriff, Fetterspield, he has called me back. I have yet to return his phone call because it was indicated that he didn't know anything about it, but I personally spoke with him. So we're going to try to figure out where we're going with this because a number of these people, some of these individuals are protected by the city, so they could care less what you think about them until their jobs become at stake, and then it becomes an issue. Others of them, you'll hear about them, and you'll hear them when it's time for them to vote, you to vote for them, and you may not hear from them again until it's time to vote. But I say it like this. Until the city works for everyone equally, it doesn't work for anybody. We've got a broken system. So I'm hoping that what we're dealing with is a failure to understand and a failure to communicate. And maybe I'm giving them a chance, to before I really give my real feelings on what we're dealing with. I really want to make sure that we're turning over every stone. We're having the conversations that are necessary, but you can be true, as I often do in true form. I'm going to give it to you straight, no chaser, no filter, and let the chips fall where they may. So we're going to give you another update. Renee Morris is out there. She's making it going. The pageant is underway. The young girls have been practicing and are still doing what is necessary. But as Elaine Cook is saying out there, she's not from the city anymore. She's on the other side. Wake up, people of color. Joke. Wake up, African descendants of slaves. Wake up. All right, so we're going to get in. I believe we have our guest that is, she's in the stream. I just want to make sure, Miss Joyce, Miss Graham, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I hear you.
And I'm believing that the chat is probably going to say that they can hear her. Miss Graham?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, we are not hearing you. I'm sure that those of you who are probably in the stream are hearing. For some reason, I'm not getting the sound through our board. And I'm just going to ask, I'm going to put the number in the stream, Miss Graham, if you could just, as a matter of fact, hello? Oh, okay, I heard a little sing. I'm going to give you the number. We can hear her. I was certain, please don't put it down. I was certain that many of you were going to say we can hear her because that's often the situation that you all are able to hear, but I can't hear. And if you can hear and I can't, it does nothing for us because I'm not able to adequately understand when she's speaking or when I'm speaking. So I greatly appreciate that. But that's not anything that I can do. And I don't control that. So I don't know what's going on. But we're going to ask that she just, get off of here, that she would then give us a call in the studio. And we'll continue this conversation. She has written several books, or a couple of different books, and is doing a number of tour dates. And she has some things coming up as she talks about mental health. And so I'm going to ask that she would just get off and she would call the studio, 989-921-7107. All right. And we're going to ask that she would come in and we would have that conversation. But as it relates to the Juneteenth celebration, those of you and many of us, in our own community, we don't even understand what Juneteenth is about. And so it's important for us to make sure that we understand. The key points of this is that in 1865 of January, we saw President Abraham Lincoln sign the Emancipation Proclamation. You heard about it in civics class in high school or grade school. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation of 1865 that was freeing all Black slaves. They were now free. But many of those slaves did not know they were free because they were working as sharecroppers in many parts of the country, especially in the South, because we understand that the fight that we saw taking place, the Civil War, was really about keeping folks enslaved or setting them free. And so many people that were in the South were yet on plantations because their owners didn't let them know that they were free. Why? Because slave labor was very important to them. So I want to make sure that we understand that. So nearly 2.5 years later, we see that that folks were set free in Galveston when General Gordon Granger went in, and he began to proclaim the edict, which was given by President Lincoln, stating that all slaves were now free. And what we're realizing, even through the things that I've talked about today, especially with the things that we relate to as it relates to the issues of what's happening in terms of us as Black folks being able to celebrate Juneteenth here in the city of Saginaw, is that we have been freed, but there's still many areas of our lives and in our country that we must be liberated. And it's such a sad thing that we can be freed by an Emancipation Proclamation, but we are still bound with the lack of being liberated. If we don't get any response from you, Ms. Graham, I'm going to have to continue forward. But if you please could call in the number that I have both texted, I see you calling in the line because we'll have to move forward. I got a lot I can talk about. But I want us to get her on the line. We have with us today Joyce Graham. Joyce, how are you doing?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing extremely well, Joyce. It is such a great opportunity to have this conversation once again. If you guys are looking, there's a young, vivacious woman, 70 plus something years old, in the stream by the name of Jackie Day. She is a friend, a surrogate mother, and she has been a mentor to me as it comes to the place of business, especially when it comes to putting on events of excellence and doing things in a big fashion. So Jackie Day, shout out to you. And you introduced me, Jackie, to this wonderful lady by the name of Joyce Graham. Joyce, why don't you share really briefly a little bit about who you are and where you hail from?
Oh, okay. I am Joyce Graham. I am an author and a professional licensed counselor. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, where I have a private practice, and just good to be here.
Okay, we had the opportunity, whenever my phone rings for Ms. Day, I answer. There are certain people that that when they call, it's because purpose is knocking at the door and you must answer the phone. And so she called me, she got you on the line, and we began to talk about the issues of mental health. I want you to share with me, because you've written 2 books, and I have to be 100% honest. I've not made it all the way through those books, so I will bring you back at the conclusion of the matter so that we can talk more in depth why people need to really read what's going on. But we understand that next month is coming up as Mental Health Awareness Month, if I'm correct. And I want to...
It's this month, Kareem.
What's that?
It's this month. It's the month of May.
It's this month. Okay, so I'm thinking it's next month. We are in Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's important that you have this conversation. And so I want you to share with our audience, because they think that Black and brown folks, going to therapy, going to see a counselor, a psychiatrist, we don't do that. We don't go and put our business in the street. So what is it why have you decided to bite or to get into this lane as it relates to making sure people are emotionally well?
Yes, that's a good question. And there's such a stigma within the African American community and also the Hispanic community, because you've talked about it several times. We struggle a lot in all different areas as people of color and as minorities. So they label us. And so we've had to just pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, so to speak, and kind of fend for ourselves. And when we did have issues that were mental issues or any other kind of concerns, we learned to just, keep it to ourselves. And we were even told by our parents, you do not share what's going on in this house with anybody else. And also in the church, we were told when we had problems, come to the altar, get prayer, get anointed, and you'll be fine. And we know that that is not true. And so I wrote the book because of my own personal struggles mentally and from what I observed in and out of the church in my own private practice, because basically my practice is comprised of African Americans and minorities, and I observed just a lot of reluctance and resistance because of the way that we have been raised and historically what we've been taught even in the church.
Ms. Graham, I want to interject really quickly. First of all, I want you to give us the names of those books that we're talking about. Absolutely, one of our listeners out there said that we often find ourselves coping instead of healing from those traumas. So I want you to give me the names of the two books, because I have two books that you wrote regarding these subjects, and then I want you to share with us what is the difference between coping with trauma and actually healing from that trauma.
Okay, I sure will. The name of the books first is Mental Health Issues in the 21st Century Church. And then the other one that deals with mental health and kind of surviving trauma and all of that, I didn't send to you, but I will. It is entitled Surviving Transition. And what was your other question?
So my question is, what is the difference between coping, which we often find folks in our community doing, and really healing? What's the difference between coping and healing?
Okay, well, most of us just cope, and the difference between coping and healing is that if we're just merely coping, then nothing is being resolved, nothing is being confronted. We are actually not getting better. In fact, we're getting worse. And the reason that we cope, especially in the church, is because we have a church faith, even if we're going through something tremendous and, horrific. We come into church, we have on our church face, we smile, we have every hair in place, we're dressed impeccably, and no one knows that there's anything wrong. We don't cry until we get in the car, and a lot of times we get home, and that's where we, have our meltdown. And so we're just merely coping, especially in the face of others, because we don't want anyone to know that there's anything wrong. So it's a facade, and that's what coping is, a facade. We're just coping. We aren't dealing with anything. We aren't confronting any issues. We aren't addressing anything because we're just, I'm okay, you're okay. That type mentality.
Oh, okay, and for our listeners that are out there, so when we cope, what she's saying is that you can be shot by a bullet and be wounded, and that bullet can remain in your body, and you can heal from the outside in, so to speak. So you stop the bleeding, the hole may close, but if that bullet is yet on the inside of you, it is setting up the possibility of damaging you and getting you sick, right? And so we not only need to be able to cope, and that means deal with the things from a topical perspective, from the outside in. So when people see us, they don't see us reacting to the trauma or to the pain that we've been dealing with. But we actually have to go through the process. You've got to go to the emergency. You need to see that doctor. Allow them to assess the situation, because there may be a need to take out the bullet so that infection or disease does not set in, or that bullet doesn't move at some particular time and damage more organs from the inside out. And what Black America has done for so long, if we're talking about this right, Ms. Graham, is that we've dealt with the topical solution of closing the womb and dealing with the Band-Aids, but we haven't really gone in to really surgically remove the thing that is causing us the pain, discomfort, and possibly that has been the source of the infection. And we find that thing moving throughout our lives and causing more damage as we continue through life. Would you say that's a safe assessment of how you put what you were saying?
Absolutely, because how many of us have suffered traumatic experiences and incidents in our childhood, but we're never allowed to discuss it or deal with it, and it follows us throughout our lives. And when we become adults, we are still impacted and affected by those things.
Okay, so I want to ask one of our listeners out there who happens to be my aunt. She's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. She said that black men take off that bandage. I'm not sure what you mean, Sister Stacy. Give me a little bit more clarity to what we're talking about because I want to make sure that I think I have an understanding, but I'm not sure. Make sure you make that clear. But what I want to ask you is if there's someone out there that has gone through a traumatic experience, Miss Graham, and they haven't had the opportunity, maybe due to lack of resources, uh, I can't say a lack of opportunity, but maybe by the encouragement of others to not say anything. Just don't say anything. If it's molestation, if it's abuse, whatever that situation may be, they've not dealt with it as as an adolescent. They find themselves as an adult with those issues, those feelings, replaying it, coming up. What should they do?
Well, they should seek professional help. They should seek the help of a mental health care professional because it's never too late. It really isn't. It's never too late.
Wow. Elaine Cook says, and when you talk about it to leaders of the church, they tell you to pray about it. I was told from leaders here in Arizona church to hold on. I was told this 3 years ago, dealing with unstable mate, not a husband. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you that a lot of what we see in black churches has been the response of the fact that we were ill-equipped to really deal with emotional and mental issues. There are churches that are being a bit more progressive. I know, Ms. Graham, when you said that you were writing the book, what the churches were a big proponent of kickback. Why do you think the churches hadn't received you initially, your initial go around, when you began to talk about issues of mental health in the church? What do you think the reason was?
Well, I think because they were resistant, mostly because the pastors have this. I won't say, that I'm not throwing shade on pastors, because I
Hey,
really.
sometimes you got to throw shade to get them into the sun.
Okay, so I will. But they think that they can handle everything without any special training. Now, let me hasten to say that pastors do, on some intuitive level, have some insight and some gifts of discernment, but they are ill equipped to handle mental health issues.
Bingo.
You know why? Because most of the time they're dealing with them themselves. They are dealing with mental health issues as well. So it would be like the blind leading the blind. So that's why they tell you to pray and to, if you just pray more, if you just fast more, get into your word more. And if you did, this wouldn't be happening to you. So people, when you get that and, it's turned around, it's like you're at fault. We have to really change the narrative, especially as African Americans. And instead of, always pointing the finger and say, what's wrong with you? The question should be, what happened to you? What is it that you've experienced? Or what is it that, either in the past or in the present or whatever you've had happen to you that causes you to feel this way? It's not that it's something wrong or that you're crazy or weak, as we sometimes label people, but something that person has experienced that has caused them to be in the emotional condition mentally, sometimes physically and emotionally impaired.
Okay, Ms. Graham, I'm going to ask that you please stay on. And those of you that are in our social media stream, we're going to continue this conversation because I got a couple of questions that are coming in through the stream and a couple of questions that I would like to ask. But unfortunately, I'm only given an hour to have these conversations, and we will have you back. So for those of you that are listening to Straight Talk, I want to thank you guys for continually listening in, making the show what it is, because Straight Talk is nothing without your viewership and your patronage. Thank you for tuning in this week. We hope that you will come again next week with more conversations, straight and with no chaser, no filter, getting to the heart of the matter. God bless you all. Grace and peace.
Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen by the host, its guest, or call-ins do not necessarily represent.
Okay, Rob, are we able to
this station,
continue through the
its owners, Alpha Media USA, or its advertisers?
Kiss 107.1 is WTLC Saginaw with Steve Harvey in the morning. Mornings can't get no better. It's the Steve Harvey Morning Show. It's simply the best R&B.
All right, Miss Graham, are you there by chance?
Yes, yes.
In your car, at work, or
I'm
live at
still here.
KSTLZ.com. We're Kiss 107.1.
Okay, she's not on the air, and you are not on the air.
So we got Miss Graham.
You can talk to her.
I am here. Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I think I had a reverb. Go ahead, Miss Graham.
Yes, yes.
Miss Graham.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so we're gonna try to work out getting the rest of this out. I just want to ask you a couple more questions.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Let's see, audition. You're gonna hear it from there. Let me see. I can't get that off the.
You can't get it through the cycle.
No.
All right. So, Miss Graham, are you able to log back in through my stream by chance? Just click the link and come in through the stream, because what I would like to do is to continue by asking you a couple questions. If not, we can end this conversation. We can pick up next time if that's not possible. I don't want to. Miss Graham?
Yes,
Are you logging back in through the stream, the link that I sent you?
yes, yes, I am.
All right, thank you. We'll sit tight for just a second.
Okay.
She heard you.
Yeah, she said she could hear me.
All right, so come to the stream here. Yeah, I'll take care of that. I got it. That won't be long, will you? Because I got it.
No. Oop.
Power cord, power blocks, power block. Oh.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
I don't know what goes through here. I don't know if I hear on the board, but I don't know how it listens to it, and I don't know how that works on here. What the deal is with that?
All right, Miss Graham is.
Come through or something. I don't know how that.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Miss Graham. Can you all hear her out there in social media land? I just want to ask her a couple of quick questions. Miss Graham, one was, and we're going to put this in the social media stream.
Okay.
They were asking, what were the names of those books again? Your books that you
Oh,
wrote.
okay, sure. One of them was named Mental Health Issues in the 21st Century Church. And then the other one was Surviving Transition.
Okay, so mental health issues in the 21st century church and surviving transitions.
Right.
All right, so I want to ask this question. When you find individuals who are experiencing trauma, and I want to speak specifically in the church, and they've gone into clergy who often feel that many things need, hey, you just need to get more Holy Ghost. You need to get, closer to God. You need to spend more time in prayer. I'm beginning to learn that we as individuals in the church need to understand that there's some demons you cast out, some you put out, and there's some that you have to talk out. Could you please explain to those who are listening, if they're not getting the support in the church that they're a part of, how do they go about and where should they begin the process of finding the help? Not necessarily leaving the ministry, because that's what we often do. We get emotional, we leave a ministry. But pastors are not equipped to deal with emotional trauma unless they've been trained in that particular area. Where should we seek out this type of help?
Okay, first I'll start off by saying what you don't do is you don't isolate yourself. What you do is there are a lot of resources, and if you start with the national resource helplines, they will direct you to a local mental health professional or either a mental health facility where you would be assigned a counselor or therapist or a psychologist or maybe even a psychiatrist, whatever you need. But there are resources out there available, and it's easy to get access to them. You start with the national, I would start with the national helplines first, and they will put you in contact with the local, the health center in your particular area.
Okay, the next question I want to ask: what are the most untreated or most overlooked areas of mental illness that we experience in our community that often goes overlooked?
I think number one is depression. That would be the most common one because everyone gets down sometimes or have the blues like they say. But when it persists for, I would say, longer than a couple of weeks, that is time to get help. But depression is the main one. And
All
I
right.
think the number two is anxiety because that stems from depression.
Okay, so depression and anxiety. Okay,
Right.
so how do we begin to understand if we're experiencing early warning signs of depression? What are the early warning signs?
Well, the early warning signs is the inability to recover from whatever is causing you to be depressed or to be sad. And a lot of times, that is closely tied to PTSD rather, post traumatic stress disorder. That's when you just can't shake, and a shake is not, for lack of a better word, that's not really a good word, but you can't overcome whatever it is that is of concern to you, and it just haunts you day and night. You begin to have nightmares about it. You can't function. It interferes with your ability to function from day to day. That's when you should really become concerned and seek help. When you stop eating, you isolate yourself, you have trouble sleeping, you start losing or gaining weight. All of those things are red flags.
Okay, and for someone out there, and this is my last question, who's dealing with a young person who is suffering from depression or maybe anxiety, I've run into a couple of those. Where should they seek help or counseling if they're a young person? Is the same National Resource Helpline a great place? Are there other places that we need to look if we're looking specifically for youth?
Well, that's a good question. If you encounter a young person, most young people are really involved with electronics, social media, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There is a number, and I'm sorry, I'll give it to you later, that young people can text and they are immediately given and put into contact with a professional, and it is anonymous. They don't have to give any kind of contact information, and they just text back and forth to their professional. And that works great for young people.
Wow, we certainly want to thank you for your time and attention on today. We are definitely going to bring you back and have deeper conversations because I think mental health is something that in our community goes overlooked, but it is so necessary for us to be able to truly be who we are and contribute to our communities in the manner that we absolutely can. So I want to thank you once again. This is Joyce Graham. You've heard the names of her books. We'll bring her back. I'll put them on Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen and also I'll give that for KISS 107.1. Thank you once again. If there's anything you'd like to say in closing, I'm going to give you the last statement. Joyce, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess what I like to leave with the listening audience is that if you need help, don't be afraid to seek help. It's out there, it's accessible more than it ever has been, especially with this post pandemic. And it really isn't post to me, because as you talked earlier in your show, people are still being affected and infected by the virus. So, you know, we from the virus, we really, because we were closed in, a lot of people really were experienced a lot of anxiety and depression simply because our whole lives were disrupted. So now there are a lot of things accessible that maybe weren't in the past, but because as a result of the pandemic, there are a lot of more mental health um, resources out there. So there's no reason for you to suffer and suffer in silence. If you feel that you really, really can't deal with what is going on in your life, then reach out
All
to
right. So
someone in there.
I want to give you the crisis text line is in the stream. It is 741-741. If you text, that's the one I believe that youth people can get in and they can begin to text back. That's text 741-741, and someone will begin a text conversation for young people to handle their issues that they're dealing with. To Sharice Steele Phillips, I'm closing out now. No, mental health is not an issue or a piece of what people are doing in terms of divinity. There are specific tracks for individuals who want counseling or guidance and counseling. That is something that they must do specifically on their own. But as we become more diverse and deal with the issues of this pandemic and a ever-changing society, it is important and imperative that pastors change with the times and understand the importance of health professionals and mental health professionals as a part of our community. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Joyce. We will have you again, and we will talk to you guys in the near future. God bless you all. Grace and peace.
Thank you.